Here at the Business Summit, we're meeting with James Passon, Executive Director of Firebird Management, the 72% owner of the Sharengot. Today at the Business Summit, Sharengot commenced the signing ceremony for the pilot shipment of the washed coal to the Korean side. So more on that project, please.
Well, I think the project's important not only for Sharon Gulf, but for Mongolia generally. Through our agreement with Mongol Samuk, which is a joint venture between the Mongolian and South Korean states, we now have the means of effectively accessing the export market. We are creating a new pathway for exports of Mongolian minerals through the Russian rail network and through the port of Rason in the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. This may be the first transshipment of minerals from North to South Korea since the Korean War, so it's quite an historic agreement, and I'm quite happy that this project is facilitating a new trade route. I believe that other Mongolian exporters will be able to enjoy the benefit of this trade route, which we are establishing as a pioneer. In President Elbegdorch's excellent opening remarks today, he mentioned that Mongolian is very important for Mongolia for mining companies to develop value-added technology, and that's exactly what Sharon Gold is doing. We're creating a wash plant which is upgrading the raw coal to an export quality coal. This is the second wash plant in Mongolia. There's only one other wash plant, but this is the only wash plant which has the ability to feed coal into the domestic market. And so, our expectation is that if the thermal coal market in the Asian Pacific region improves in the next 3 to 5 years, which I believe it will, we'll look to expand our wash capacity and to take advantage of the new trade route which we're pioneering.
So how much value the commencement of the washing plant and the shipment abroad will add to the Sharengot itself? Not that many people know that Sharengot is one of the biggest joint stock companies on the Mongolian Stock Exchange with the good governance.
Well, Sharon Gold was I believe it was the first and one of only 2 companies on the Mongolian Stock Exchange that have a JORC-compliant mineral resource statement. It's one of the only companies that has unqualified financial statements from Ernst & Young, which is one of the top global auditors. So Sharon Gold's transparency and corporate governance has been recognized by experts. And in fact, Firebird has recently entered into an agreement through which effectively Firebird's controlling stake in the company will become listed on the Singapore Stock Exchange Catalyst Board. If we succeed in this listing later this year, it will be the first listing by effectively a Mongolian mining company on the Singapore Exchange, I think, which is further evidence of the strong corporate governance at Sharon Gold. In terms of the financial impact of this agreement, that will become clear over time, in our financial statements. But what I'm excited about is now through our cooperation with the Mongolian and South Korean state, that we're getting a very strong partner that will provide, an additional new, very profitable, revenue stream for the company, and it will provide the platform for future growth expansion.
As being one of the biggest investors into the capital market here in Mongolia, how do you see the development of the market itself in coming years?
Well, the Mongolian Stock Exchange has gone through a pretty difficult period. There has been a very dramatic reduction in liquidity and trading volume, and a lot of foreign investors have left the market. But there are some hopeful signs. The Mongolian Stock Exchange Top 20 Index has begun to recover, and really since the announcement of the approval of the OT Phase 2 deal, the Mongolian currency has begun to appreciate. The Mongolian stocks have begun to recover. There's a lot of evidence of Mongolian individual investors coming back into the market, and my hope is that the Mongolian regulators will begin to put more pressure on public companies to improve transparency and corporate governance. and that improving corporate governance will attract more investors into the market. And there have been some important improvements in the regulatory environment, the approval of regulations for share custody. This is a change which could result in large institutional funds coming into the market. So as we see companies, Mongolian companies evolve and become involved in transparency and adding value and creating the potential for future profitable growth and sharing that income stream through dividends and through other actions to enhance shareholder value, that will reignite the speculative interest in Mongolia. And Mongolia, while the growth has been reducing in recent years, it has the potential for the growth to revive. And if we look at the positive dynamics in the coal market, thermal coal market in the Asian Pacific region, this can be one of the sectors which could revive the optimism about Mongolia's growth potential. So I think as we see OT Phase 2 investments begin to start, that we could see a similar phenomenon that we saw with OT Phase 1. And OT Phase 1 investment drove this great bull market in Mongolian assets. So I think we're at the beginning of a similar cycle.
So you mainly see the positive changes already coming into Mongolian market.
Well, the Mongolian parliament in October 2012 approved the investment law, which is, I think, a very good investment law. It's fair both to foreign investors and to the Mongolian people, the Mongolian state. It's a very progressive legislation. We have the Mongolian parliament approved a securities law, which I think is also much better than the old one. And there are other changes from the point of view of law, of legislation, of regulations, which has created the framework for capital formation. And now, China, which is pumping hundreds of billions of dollars to revive the ancient Silk Road trade route, Mongolia, I believe, will be a beneficiary of this trade route. It will open new low-cost, high-speed export routes to Europe, to the Middle East. And so the impact of all of this infrastructure investment in northern China and in Central Asia will create yet a new market for Mongolian mineral exporters. So I think in terms of copper, iron ore, coking coal, gold, all of these moly, these minerals, there's a new massive demand pressure coming, and I think the confluence of constructive, stable legislation and regulations and new demand coming from Chinese state policy is creating almost the perfect environment for Mongolia. And I think that the very bullish conditions which existed 3 years ago are coming. That there will be more expats in the restaurants, in the hotels, spending money, and this will revive the small businesses, allow them to refinance bank loans, and the bad debts will begin to reduce at the banks, and the entire financial system will be reliquefied. And so this positive change, I see it very clearly, and my expectation is within 3 to 4 months that other investors will also begin to recognize these changes and will begin to re-enter the market.
Okay, thank you for your very helpful insight on what's going on the coal market here in Mongolia and also the capital market here. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thanks.